The Federal and Devaki Specialty Hospital jointly present the Madurai Marathon 2024 Run for Health on Sunday, October 20th, 2024. Entry is free for all.
Hello and a warm welcome to Federal's special program, Capital Beat. Relations between India and Canada have hit a rock bottom, especially after the expulsion of the diplomats from both the countries. And this is because Justin Trudeau has been leveling some very serious allegations about the involvement of the Indian agents as far as the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar is concerned. Now, what has happened after Trudeau made these allegations recently, and just about, I think, day before yesterday, the Royal Canada Mounted Police officials, they also leveled some serious allegations, and they hinted at the fact that the New Delhi is using Lawrence Bishnoi gang to engage in criminal activities. That was something which was beyond everybody's comprehension. And then Washington Post also did a story pinpointing fingers at Union Home Minister Amit Shah. They named an unnamed raw official. Now, what would you really say to this diplomatic fallout which we see between the two countries? And is this repair of relationship possible given the fact the scale at which it has really come down? So joining me now is Ambassador Meera Shankar. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining. We have Dakshin Murthy, who's the managing editor of The Federal. Thank you so much, Dakshin, for joining. And we have international affairs expert Sanjay Kapoor also with us. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for joining. And let me begin with Ambassador Meera Shankar.
Sure.
It seems that, there is some sort of a conspiracy, you would call, or it's some kind of a political compulsion on the part of Justin Trudeau. Different people are reading the controversy in different manner. And but how would you really define this situation where India and Canada have reached?
It's a very difficult impasse because the Canadian government is making these allegations and the Indian government is saying that there's absolutely no substance and they are baseless because the Canadians haven't provided evidence to back up the allegations that they are making. Both sides have expelled diplomats in a tit-for-tat action, including the Indian High Commissioner to Canada has been withdrawn, and the head of the Canadian mission here has also been declared persona non grata and will be leaving. Clearly, I mean, the Indian High Commissioner or the head of the mission is never involved in any kind of activities of this nature. And obviously, there is some element of politics in Pierre Trudeau's taking such a public stance on the issue and leveling these allegations in public, because he is trying to cultivate the minority votes in Canada in an election which everybody is predicting is going to be uphill for his Liberal Party. Now, quite frankly, at this juncture, it doesn't look as though the two countries would be able to quickly repair their relations because they've sunk to such a pass that they are not really communicating with each other, but actually communicating at each other. And but I think there is an assessment that if there is a change of government in Canada and the Conservative Party comes to power, that you may see a shift in the kind of very public allegations which have been made and perhaps less tolerance of extremist activity.
But Ambassador Shankar, I wanted to ask you one more question and then I'll go to Dakshin. That calling diplomats persons of interest calling names of Union Home Minister. Now, is it something which is very, very unprecedented and has not been heard before? The kind of allegations he's leveled and calling diplomats persons of interest, calling names of the Union Home Minister. How would you see that?
Well, I really don't know what the facts are in this case because you have two narratives. You have the narrative from the Canadian government, and then you have the narrative from the Indian government, which is rubbishing the allegations. So, where the truth exactly lies, I think, is difficult to tell for a layperson who's not privy to the details of policies being followed at this juncture.
And also those four people who are arrested, ma'am, and now apparently the court case will be on. Justin Trudeau will try and put all his energy into, submitting the evidence. So do you think that there could be any serious trouble for India now that they've taken names, they've called out diplomats? So would you say that there could be some trouble for India in the coming days, maybe as the case advances in Canada?
Look, I don't know about Canada, but certainly in the US, the case for where Mr. Gupta is being tried for having attempted an assassination of Panoon. And of course, it looks such a, amateurish operation because they are talking about the whole thing, messaging and having phone conversations, and the person whom he approaches is an FBI agent to help him execute the plot. So really looking like Peter Sellers and the Pink Panther, but it's going to trial, and that will be a public trial. So we have to see where the links of Mr. Gupta go, because I think these issues are also interlinked. And when the trial of Mr. Gupta takes place and it is public, a lot of people are going to be watching to see what are the revelations and facts which emerge from that trial.
All right. Now I'll come to you, Dakshin. How would you really see this entire situation where people are saying that US apparently is also trying to flame up this whole issue. People are saying that the countries of the Five Eyes, they have also gotten very active. Do you see this as some sort of a conspiracy against India, or you would say that there could be an element of truth in what Justin Trudeau is saying?
See, we can look at it as a conspiracy if there is a fundamentally a problem between India and any of these countries, but they're all allies. They're all on the same side. If you take the geopolitical situation, India and US are quite close to each other. Of course, the US and Canada their relationship is something, which we can't even discuss because they're extremely close to each other. But the point here is, the way it could have been handled, probably should have been different. Many of these kind of issues in international politics are not very uncommon. They do happen. Sometimes you have countries which are friendly, let's say even between Israel and the US, where you have Israeli agents, caught spying in the US and things like that. So you would always wonder, why would they want to do that, being such a friendly country? So things can happen. See, under the surface, a whole lot of things continues to happen. They'll continue. They've always happened. So in a situation like this, I think should have been handled more maturely. That's what because once it comes into the public space, then it becomes that much more difficult. So ideally, this should have been handled through back channel negotiations, and some kind of an agreement should have been arrived at, and it should have been quietened down. So in this current case, my own assessment is that the United States would really not want Canada and India to, be at each other's throat, because both are their friends. And also overall, it doesn't give a good image of the allies and, their relationships, of course. And then you also see India cooperating with the US. A team has gone to the US to help them investigate this Panoon murder attempt. So unfortunately, at this point in time, in the United States has a lame duck government, the election just around, say, in a month or so. So that probably, may probably be hampering their, activities or their, actions. But obviously, the system works, even if the top leaders are busy, in election campaigns. So I think my own gut feeling is that the US will somehow step in and try to, bring about some kind of a peace in this situation.
But Dakshin, one more question, and then I'll come to Sanjay. That what would you say to the Washington Post report? Because they've spoken to a Canadian official, and on the basis of that, they've come out with this entire report, taking names of Amit Shah, saying that there was a raw official as well. What
Yeah.
would you call this report as an irresponsible report? Because they don't seem to have fact checked it with any kind of independent source, and they've come up with a report. So, what would you say to the Washington Post report?
I mean, see, when we talk about the Washington Post, it's one of the world's leading media publications. You can't be so
Yes.
dismissive about what the Washington Post writes. And if there is a fundamental flaw in what they have written, then there has to be a counter to that, which I don't think has come so far. And at the end of the day, what typically happens in these kind of situations is that it is a news story and it's based on sources who were at the meeting, in Singapore, if I'm not mistaken. So, so these, so it's at the end of the day a story. It's not officially come out from, any Canadian government, a spokesperson or anything like that. So, to that extent, the governments, really need not respond to that. But at the same time, since it has come in the Washington Post, we cannot be dismissive either. So we just need to wait and watch.
Okay. So now, Sanjay, will there be any kind of stepping back from both sides? Or would you just say that the two countries are going to wait and see as to how things unfold, and then they will decide what to do? Because as of now, we don't see any kind of stepping back which is possible between the two countries.
Thank you, Neelu, for giving me a chance to listen to the ambassador and Dakshin. I think it has become gone too far. If you look at it, the way the United States of America, England both have supported Canada's contention, and they are saying that India needs to cooperate. So, in a certain way, there's enormous pressure which is being mounted on India, and there is an agreement which is available where the five countries are concerned that the quality of evidence is fine enough for India to take, look at it and take a respond to it. This is a very extraordinary situation. I don't think Indian diplomacy or Indian political leadership has had the experience to handle such a thing. They have never faced a crisis like this. It's all right to talk about it, all the fancy words and footwork that might be seen in the media, but this is an extraordinary situation where a country which is supposed to be part of the Western allies, somebody with we had been conversing for long years, makes a very serious allegation about how we are, managing a criminal network or somebody who's responsible for a recent assassination in Bombay. So if that kind of allegation can't be countered by the government of India, then it's really a problem. You may try to dismiss it by saying that it doesn't really there's no substance in it, but there is something to ponder over. And they're also mentioning the name of the Home Minister, Mr. Amit Shah, which is far more worrying, because if you look at the context of that allegation, it emanates from the Singapore meeting between the National Security Advisor and some of the people from Canada, these officials who had converged there. And initially, the NSA refuted such suggestions, and later on, according to the report, agreed to some of the stuff. And in fact, he reeled out a whole lot of stuff about Lawrence Bishnoi and what he's been involved in. So there is seemingly a suggestion that he didn't really disagree with what was being told at that point of time. This is the worrying bit. Although there has been no detailed analysis coming in mainstream media or even on TV like it should have been, but the worrying part is that the report of Washington Post, where it mentions against Mr. Amit Shah, needs to be countered very, very effectively. Without that, if India would be seen as some, a country which has been sustaining a criminal network and engaging in assassinations abroad. We are not like that. We are a democracy. We have a rule of law. We don't do that kind of stuff. And there is a certain kind of agreement that you also see when it comes to perceiving the Khalistanis as people who are opposed to India. So it cuts across all political lines. But the Congress is also there. Recently, the CPM also came out with a statement backing the government. So I think there needs to be certain amount of use of imagination, creativity, use of resources to ensure India has a right kind of explanation to debunk. But contrarily, what is happening, that India is participating in a probe in the US, where we have a judicial verdict, not verdict, but a judicial court looking into an allegation which is very similar to what happened in Canada. Although the gentleman who's about whom we are talking, he didn't die, or an assassination did not happen, but there was a sting operation in which there was a member of the RNDW, or covert intelligence agency, who was involved. So there is endorsement coming in when we take part in just across the border in the US, but at the same time we are debunking whatever happened in Canada. So I don't know how it will all play out, despite the fact that very important voices from India are critical of it. But I think it is a very serious event and should be taken seriously.
Right. So, Ambassador Shankar, how long can India continue to remain dismissive? Because there are questions which are bound to be asked, and as what Sanjay was saying, that until unless they give a strong a counter to whatever has been published in Washington Post, people will think that maybe something of this sort is happening, and they will blame Amit Shah, they will blame the raw officials, they will blame our diplomacy, that maybe our approach towards foreign policy is wrong. So, what should India be doing at this point of time? So far, they have just been dismissing everything and junking off whatever has been coming from Canada's side.
Yes, with Canada, I think the Indian government has adopted an approach saying there's no basis for the allegations. But with the US, they have been having a confidential dialogue on the allegations, which have been made very public, and where a trial is going on. And there have also been reports that some individual from RNAW has been held accountable, and that he is no longer in government service, and that he may also have been arrested,
Vikram
which
Yadav.
would seem to imply that there is an element of truth in the allegations which came out with regard to Mr. Gupta's attempted assassination attempt. And the Canadians, of course, say that they have excerpts of conversations between different Indian officials, whether India would be using something like the Bishnoi gang. Earlier, he was believed to be quite close to the Khalistanis. And in fact, there's a National Investigating Agency
No, but
report
Ambassador Shankar,
saying
if
that he worked with them to get access to arms, and was also helping them with drug running to fund his operation. So I really don't know what this could be. But certainly, I think it behoves India to deal with these issues more seriously. And it also behoves Canada to actually give a more sympathetic ear to the concerns that India expresses about extremist or separatist activity originating from Canada, which targets India. Now, you see, a Canadian expert told me that they don't have a law which criminalizes incitement to violence. So someone can actually incite you to go and kill somebody else. But that is not considered illegal in Canada. So there's something to be said about tightening the legal framework in Canada. And there's something to be said for India using legal processes through extradition requests backed with evidence which will stand up in a Canadian court to keep pursuing their cases. They need to be persistent rather than making broad brush allegations. They have to be specific, back it with specific evidence. And the Canadians have to be more responsive, not like the Kanishka episode where they absolutely bungled the investigation, and their own inquiry committee, which went into it, recognized that a lot of the evidence in that had been allowed to slip through their fingers. And in fact, at that time, there was a real nadir in Indo-Canada relations. And again, the Canadians turned on us and they wanted the entire intelligence wing of the embassy actually withdrawn. And that happened. And it took a long time for both sides to repair the relationship and to rebuild it. I think both sides really must step back, because it's not in their interest to let this spiral out of control. You know, who benefits from this? It's not something which, what benefit does India derive from taking such covert action? It's questionable, because Khalistan is no longer an issue, a live issue in Punjab. It doesn't resonate. So if you're really looking at, the possibilities of what options you have, you would obviously weigh the risk, or should, I won't say would, you should weigh the risk against any potential benefit.
Another question which I have in mind, and then I'll take the concluding comments from Dakshin and Sanjay. That, ma'am, the Canadian police, leveling allegations about Lawrence Bishnoi gang. Then the Washington Post taking names of Amit Shah, Home Minister, and the raw official. Do you see this as some kind of a very, very serious transgression where the boundary line has been crossed outrightly, and Justin Trudeau seems to be at a greater fault rather than India?
Well, let me say that Western countries have had recourse to such methods very frequently as part of their whole tool of strategic and foreign policy. India actually has been very reticent in using such methods. We've believed that diplomacy and legal processes are the better way to follow, perhaps stemming from our Gandhian principles that the means are as important as the ends. And if there has been a shift, which I can't say there has been, but going by the case in the US, it appears so, then I think it's not good to be identified as a thuggish state, because at the end of the day, there is a global asymmetry of power. And what the West can get away with, it's a question whether India can actually seek to emulate that. I don't think we should, and I don't think whether we have or not is also in question.
Right. Dakshin, to a very important question now to you, that what do you think is going to be the fallout on the lakhs and lakhs of Indian citizens who are staying in Canada, and this kind of skirmish which is seen, a diplomatic skirmish between the two countries? What do you think could be the impact on the Indian citizens there?
Okay, obviously the fallout is what one should really be worried about, not just in terms of geopolitics, but also in terms of bilateral relationship. There are an estimated 15 lakh Indians in Canada, half of which are the Sikhs, many of whom have been there for a very long time. And there has been so much of a free movement of people from India to Canada. A lot of people have migrated. There is a big demand for people to go and work there, settle there, and all that. Plus, you also have a very thriving trade between the two countries. So it's the fear is that something like this can completely upend the whole this relationship, and the consequences of that can can actually hurt the common people. People who are who have the families here, who are there, and all this free travel between the two countries, etc. I mean, it's not good, because it also brings about a lot of insecurity within Canada of the Indian diaspora who are staying there. it could also bring about a kind of a wedge between the Sikhs, the Khalistanis, or the people who oppose Khalistan. It's already happened. It's already happened in Canada that there have been some kind of skirmishes between the pro-Khalistanis among the Indian diaspora and the people who are anti-Khalistan. And the worst thing that can happen is give a new life to this whole Khalistan movement itself, which for all practical purposes was actually dead and gone. So much so that in the current generation, people didn't even know what Khalistani movement meant. So to that extent, it had died down and it was almost dormant instead of coma. Now to revive it, and then, and these things have their own repercussions, and the people who will feel it are our own people, Indian diaspora in Canada. So I think one needs to the government should take all this into account and I think deal with this more sensitively than try to brazen it out and, act very tough and, say, we're going to do this or do that. I think a lot of sensitivity is required, at this stage, dealing with this situation.
Okay. So, Sanjay, concluding thoughts from you on whatever has happened between India and Canada, and how soon can we expect that, the ties can be repaired or there can be some sort of a stepping back in the days to come? Or do you think that the possibility is very, very remote?
I'm very pessimistic about it, primarily because India must have tried whatever they could, and the usual resort is that using the offices of the United States of America in trying to ride out all the problems. That seemingly has not happened. In fact, if you look at it, the US has been very prompt in backing Canada. So has the UK. So what is the resort? What is the resort you have? What do you do at the end of it? You can't be calling the BRICS and the SCO to issue a statement. You can't do that because that will really show that you have deserted the camp, the Western camp. So it is a tricky situation. I don't know how it will get resolved. I can't really think because I haven't come across a situation like this before. And it would be wrong on part of India to submit to an investigation where it has to clarify whether Mr. Amit Shah is involved or not. It's a crazy kind of situation. I don't think anything is going to happen anytime soon. And Mr. Trudeau is not going anytime soon because there is a perception in India that he can be booted out and he'll lose the election. That may happen maybe in another 3, 4, 5 months. But what do you do till then? You can't be just hoping that things will work to your advantage. And he could whip up this entire issue as something that is very nationalistic and how he's protecting the Canadian citizen from foreign interference, which is his pitch at the moment. So I think it's a tricky situation, and I think Indian government will have to use its imagination and ample resources to get out of it.
Absolutely. And I think the most important point was that will there be a counter to whatever came out and was published in Washington Post? So we'll have to wait and watch for all that. Thank you so much, Ambassador Shankar, Dakshin, Sanjay. It was wonderful having you on the program. And one appeal to the viewers who are watching this discussion, subscribe to our channel, send us your feedback, and stay tuned to The Federal.
The Federal and Devaki Specialty Hospital jointly present the Madurai Marathon 2024 Run for Health on Sunday, October 20th, 2024. Entry is free for all.